Everyone says how horrible it will be to renovate or build your house. We're here to say it doesn't have to be that way. Join 3 seasoned architects as they interview homeowners who recently completed a large project and ask them one simple question. What do you know now that you wish you knew before you started? Welcome to Home, the Second Story podcast.
Welcome to Home, the Second Story. If you're new here, this is where 3 architects explore the post-construction stories of homeowners who have built or renovated homes that they love. I'm Sherry Scott, joined by my co-hosts, Marilyn Modinger and Taylor Davis. And today we're excited to have Paul and Rebecca Sinopoli share their journey. Welcome, Paul and Rebecca.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
If you guys could just give us a general overview of your project, when you did it, was it a full custom home build? Did you use an architect for the project? Which I'll step up and say I was their architect. When did you complete it? And basically, was there one standout feature, something that really kind of guided your entire project? If you want to just start with an overview that way.
Well, I guess we started the process in about, I think it was 2021, sometime in 2021, late 2021, after military, and we had retired here to Dayton, Ohio. And Rebecca was getting the itch to lay down roots that she hasn't done in her entire life because she was a military brat as well.
Right.
Marrying me and then traveling around. So, and when we looked around and thought about places we wanted to be, we happened to be in Dayton, of course, so we had a couple of businesses that we had sold. And it just made sense. Rebecca had a lot of excitement about Dayton and what's happening here and continues to happen.
Well, what catalyzed us to build was we couldn't find a duplex for my mother to come out.
Yeah.
So
that was the catalyst we were looking for.
She was in Wyoming, and she has 3 daughters, and both of my sisters live in bigger cities. And that she's a very social person like myself. So that wasn't really feasible for her to be in a big city and still get around easily. So that was part of it. And so we decided to build. And unfortunately, though, we built on a hill. So it's more of an up and down duplex like you would find in Hawaii, where real estate is at a premium, which is fine. It turned out just fine. And we moved in December of 23.
But that's a really good point that you make about your mother coming to join. I mean, the whole idea was to try to build a space that would accommodate her, us as well as her.
So with our own separate apartment, she's not living.
Right. We didn't want to have her feel like she was living in our house.
Right. So it is truly a multi-generational home.
Yeah, exactly. Her mom, our 2 grown children, and us. A couple of dogs and cats. Rebecca mentioned we finished in 2023 after a bunch of starts and stops, and as it goes in the building process.
So once you decided what you wanted, so you were looking for a multi-generational home in Dayton, Ohio, and you knew you had to build it because you couldn't find it anywhere, right?
Right. I had been through a bunch of renovations myself, and it was time to do something new as opposed to renovating.
So what were your first steps once you finally decided, like, okay, this is what we're doing?
Well, we kind of got the cart before the horse and bought a piece of land from a friend who was anxious to get rid of it. So he got rid of it at a pretty good price, but it is on a hill, and that has its all unique challenges that we were pretty ignorant about, quite honestly. I mean, even despite our friend who said, hey, you need to go to Pittsburgh. You need to go to Pittsburgh and see how they build on hills. That's what they do.
On hills, yeah. Or just down in Cincinnati, right? We do a lot of hills down there.
And whenever you do want, we just figured it can't be that hard. So, I mean, how this area, actually, this plat was developed in the late 70s. Actually, our next door neighbor is still alive. So I figured if they could do it back in 1978, 79, we could probably do it in 2021. So that's what led us to the confidence, maybe the false confidence, I guess, of tackling this project.
Paul decided we discussed it, but Paul kind of led this, that a very contemporary house is what he had in his vision. And so somewhere we had a magazine and Sherry's Spring House Architects was featured.
Well, literally Googling it, and Sherry Scott came up, and we said, and then really we interviewed one architect.
I was about to ask about her competition. Did she have any competition?
We didn't even look.
Been involved.
We're so brilliant that way, just like building house on a hill. But honestly, Sherry is a gold mine. The house on the hill was a,
It's been fun.
what would you call that?
It's gold mine as well. Different gold
Well,
mine.
that is where we started. I remember that we walked the lot together and kind of identified some of the hurdles we were going to have, and really to site the home on that hill, not necessarily parallel to the street. Remember that when we
Right,
walked
yeah.
up there and we're like, okay, you guys told me the sun's going to set over there and we want to see that sunset every single night. And so I said, okay, we're not going to sit straight on the street. Then we're going to turn it a little bit and it will be okay. But there was a lot of engineering to go into that hillside, holding up the hillside, not only because of where the house wanted to sit, but then we wanted some living space out behind it. So of course we had to push that hill back and hold that up, and then hold up the driveway coming all the way up, right? And you guys, how do you feel about that driveway? Have you gotten used to it?
It is a heated driveway, but not yet. And this year we've had 2 good snowstorms, so it's a good thing we have a bobcat with a thing that takes snow out of the way. Because it's a long driveway.
Yes, exactly. We had to kind of do a switchback.
Yeah, if we were going to do that, which we decided not to. And we did a switchback, you're right, to get up to the house. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. So your construction, let's jump into the actual construction. So Paul, you have a unique story in construction because you did have a general contractor, but you did a lot of the work in the construction of it, right?
I did, yeah. Yeah, I actually had 3 general contractors. One who got rid of me, one who I got rid of, and then one who we settled on, which worked out well, given my proclivities and my background, my interests, my available time, all these things that really played into a very, very involved homeowner, much to the chagrin of probably both the architect and the builder.
Well, that was part of the reason why we were either fired or we didn't go with the second guy and fire him, because he really wanted to be involved. And
Really,
not all contractors want the owner to be involved. In fact, we were told that it will make all these people nervous. Well, they really did.
slow the press.
Those people that were working here really thought he was the GC.
Quick question. Lots of people go through the contractor selection process, and it can be rough for a lot of reasons. Whether it's because there's a budget that they can't hit, or it's a conflict in personalities, or somebody wants somebody to feed the dog and they're not feeding the dog. There's all sorts of reasons why. When in the process did y'all finally land on the contractor that ended up doing the majority of the work in conjunction with you, Paul?
It was basically, so we had construction documents.
Okay.
I just received back the bid from our second contractor, which caused us to gasp. Basically say, I don't know how we're going to do this build at that number, except to cut out his rather large feet. So, and knowing that I could probably do some of the stuff that he was doing, I felt like that was probably prudent. Now, having said that, it would have been cheaper to use him.
That's interesting.
Sadly.
I'm curious about that. I never heard that come out of this.
Well, yeah,
I want to know more about that.
I don't know that. I mean, I'm just to say, to build this house, if he would have not made money, he would have been putting money into it. obviously been a lot of scope changes and things like that, change orders that would have come into play to make it happen. Mainly because we've talked about it, touched on it a couple of times. Building on a hill, I think there was just a lot of unknowns that came into play. We had a pretty good idea from the siding that Sherry had did, and then we had an engineer that said this is what you needed to do. But that was really, not Sherry, it was the engineers. We ended up with a lot more retainage than I think you would see on those initial documents. Not even really a lot more.
I think it was also the fact that even before we had a contractor, we had already purchased a lot of the kitchen appliances for both units and all sorts of stuff. I mean, during the time that we were doing this, there was a real challenge, or at least they talked about it being a challenge in getting your goods.
Because you started during COVID, right?
Right.
We were designing during COVID, and then
Right.
when you started, it still was all upside down.
And that's stuff you just don't see until you're in the midst of doing it. And
Right.
I think you're walking the land, you're going from here to there, and you're feeling it. You don't, one thing on paper, but to actually feel it is completely different.
So how does that feel when you are discovering something during construction that maybe feels different than you expected or is different than you planned for? How does that feel, and how did you react as the project went on?
It's exciting, actually. That's exciting. Really,
good.
To me,
I
it
like
is
that
exciting.
answer.
Yeah, no, it is because it's what makes the build process fun. What's not
Yeah.
exciting? What's not exciting is then writing the check, pay the bill for that. So yeah, I mean that's what made it fun. You coming across a challenge or opportunity that you kind of had to put your heads together and figure it out, and you're just going to get that regardless of what happens. In nothing can be perfectly designed.
You use the word opportunity, which I think is really key. So sometimes those surprises are not bad. They're actually a moment to get something better than you thought. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know a lot of stuff. I did have a builder that was very, very knowledgeable. I've been doing it for 25, 30 years. And so it was helpful to have him as top cover and just kind of guiding the process, but not getting in the way of me doing what I wanted to do, what I felt like I needed to do.
So, Rebecca, did you feel the same way about it being an opportunity?
I might not have known about him all the time. I'm just thinking about some of the things that he's saying, but for the most part, I think I knew everything because it was pretty well designed, to be honest. There are issues that they're not in the design stuff, but it's things that we chose to do that I think I would definitely caution people on. We have more lighting in this house than is necessary.
Happens all the time.
And I feel like, and I'm not going to name the company, but they had no problem wining and dining us. And I think that could have been a red flag if I had been smarter.
But that's interesting that in hindsight, which is the whole reason we're talking to you now, having been in for a year, in hindsight, you would say, what about that lighting design? Would you have started earlier or asked more questions?
I would have asked more questions. I took the lighting on the construction documents as guidance. This was just my ignorance. I'm sure a lot of thought and architectural knowledge went into that lighting package, but I didn't. I kind of dismissed that when I had the opportunity to work with this expert, in lighting.
Right. Right. Did you do an automated system also?
We did. Yeah, we
Is it-
did. We did.
Still confusing.
It's not that. It's only confusing because we haven't finalized it yet. It is panelized lighting. Yeah. So there's a lot of capability in this lighting that we're not even scratching the surface of. They're right now. We're just operating as light switches.
We've been hearing that more and more. As an architect, many of my clients are saying, do not give me a lighting package.
Automated. Yeah. We don't do them in any of our projects. We don't. We design full lighting packages. We design all the lighting for our projects, but we do not do any sort of smart home lighting stuff. It's too much. People are like, I just want a light switch.
Rebecca, anything that you think would help somebody that's getting ready to go into this process? Anything that you thought was going to be great and didn't turn out so great, or something? The lighting is a great example because that's something that you took a lot of time, a lot of thought, a lot of money. And now in hindsight, a year later, you're like, yeah, I probably would do something different.
Our cabinetry is beautiful. However, in hindsight, I don't know how many people understand how tall. It's more than 12 feet.
This is 12 feet. That's 12 feet.
Okay, it's tall. And every person that walks in this house, how do you get up? How did you use those?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, to be honest, don't. We have to get a very tall ladder, and we don't use this space. We use it, but there's stuff we never need.
You're talking about cabinets that are up high on a wall. That's what you're.
The top of the tallest cabinet, top of the cabinets is at 10 feet.
Well, this one right here is easy to look at.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, we're getting a
do you
tour.
see how tall that is? That very tallest one has a cookie jar in it.
That's a good place if you don't want to eat cookies. If you're trying to stop yourself from eating cookies,
It's just a collector piece. It sits up there and looks at you. But I don't think, we probably wouldn't need that upper.
Interesting.
We used reclaimed barn wood for our flooring.
Oh, yes. That is beautiful. Beautiful.
We wanted a high sheen, and they tried to discourage us. This is our third house with hardwood floors that we've had either refinished or new, in this case, or, yeah. And every time they're saying, oh, you really don't want to do high sheen. But I would definitely, as somebody going into this, whether it's refinished or, or new, push it.
Well, I think that's great advice in general. If there's it's your home. If there's something that you really feel strongly about, we're as architects or, contractors or whatever are here to give advice and to hopefully tell you and help you through lessons that we've learned over our decades of experience. But at the end of the day, you want that high gloss, it's your house. And having the confidence to stand in those decisions, I think, is really good advice.
Yeah, but it's also you need to know when to defer to the experts that you guys are, honestly. So
that's really hard to know the difference, right?
It is hard. It is hard. But there are a couple things. There's one thing in particular that I wish I had sought Sherry's advice on, honestly. But it's an easy fix down the road if I ever want to do it.
What's that?
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah.
We're on pins and needles.
I know, we're all waiting.
And this was, it's not an interior design. Outside, there's too many colors. I've got some accented brown and a light gray, it's beautiful. And I added one more color gray for the soffits and downspouts. And I should have just done black,
So I've got a question. You said you've done renovations. You've done several renovations before. Was this your first new build?
It is.
A lot of us do renovations and additions and new construction. And one of the things that we know when we're talking to somebody who's doing a renovation, and you know this well, is that you know what problems you want to fix. Like, you've lived in the house, you've got a pretty set idea of exactly what it is you want to solve. With a new house, it's kind of a blank slate. Like, what lessons did you take from your renovation projects that you had worked on in the past and bring to the table for this project? Because it's kind of interesting. Some people don't have that opportunity. And so I think that's a good lesson for folks.
The one thing that keeps coming up in my mind in terms of the problem with renovations is you're stuck a lot of times with what you have as far as framing goes, right? You can go down to the bones, but it's still framed. You still got what you got. If your foundation isn't exactly where it needs to be, all the multiplication of problems that happen throughout the eventual, paint on the walls, it really adds up. I did some stuff in this house that was unique. Folks don't do really, unless you're really super high-end homes. I saw it I'm watching a series on television, Silicon Valley, or these, ultra rich, Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. They have trimless homes, like trimless, it's just this.
All the door jams, right?
But it's a really hard thing to achieve in practicality.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good example, Paul. I remember when you brought up that detail. That is one of the things that a lot of times clients will say, okay, I want a super modern house and I want everything clean line. And they tend to think that's going to be less expensive because you don't have the trim to buy, right? But it is, the detail is so difficult to achieve and to make look right. You need a plan for that. You need to follow through the trim to how it touches the floor, how it touches the baseboard, all of that you need to figure out ahead of time, which takes time, design time. And then you need labor, people that know how to execute that. And Paul, I think you were doing it yourself, right?
I did. And that's what highlighted the framing issues that I've seen that you wouldn't see if you just trim this house out. And quite honestly, I'm going to have to go back and add trimmer. I mean, where it landed perfectly, I love it. It's really nice. It's really cool. But there's too many places that it didn't land just right. So I'm going to have to retrofit, go into this renovation mindset to figure out how I'm going to make it look finished. I still don't have finished trim in here, Sherry, upstairs. Because of that reason.
That's the problem with being your own contractor. you just never quite get to the finish line.
You get behind, that's for sure.
Post-construction, how did you guys feel? More of like the feelings of the entire process. Were you exhausted by it? Were you sick of it? Were you excited? How did that go when you were finally finishing up?
When we moved in, it was, the process was slower than we expected. Part of that was because of the times, and we're building in an area that is dated, and there's not a lot of lots here. So here we are building a custom home, and the bank is like not taking into account the inflated prices and things like that. And all the houses around us are, going to be valued less than what a new build is. And so they had no comparables. So we got hit with a good pause, which was frustrating. So anyway, we had to move in before all the little things were finished. Well, as a consumer, or whatever you want to call it, I had a completely different vision. I was expecting it to be completely finished, 100%, and moving in, and that was not the case. And that's okay. I'm just saying that was my first experience with that.
Yeah, but Sherry touched on it. When the owner is also the builder, that does all this stuff just gets about 97%, and
90%.
Maybe. Can you name 5%?
In the vein of advice and lessons learned, knowing what you know now, what's one thing you wish you knew before you started?
I think talking to each other along the way, like maybe even monthly, making sure you're on budget, why you're off budget, recalculating, observing. I think I was pretty lax on that because I work almost full time, and Paul's, kind of the GC, right? And so just trusting that, and it became an issue down the road that, we're over budget. Okay. But that could have been maybe brought back, but maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the problem. When you make all these investments in the design and the materials and, your appliance package, it's easy to say, oh gosh, we couldn't have But really, these investment decisions are made up front, and you can't decide to do, I don't know, we had it to be appliance, so it didn't matter, and I would have continued to do those. Because those decisions are made so far in advance, you just got to kind of bite the bullet. And frankly, we're biting the bullet pretty big. So I mean, Sherry, we walked in, I think, with an $850,000 project, thinking maybe $1 million. If I were to tell you I put $2.1 million in this house, would you believe me?
Is that right?
It's very
Wow.
significant. It's very significant.
Yeah.
It's not a lot, not a little bit of money. So
Yeah.
that's been a big challenge. And the builder that I fired was 1.6, but I really don't think he could have done it. I know he couldn't have done it, because for me, the biggest thing was the unknown and building on the hill in this day and age.
Right. All of that engineering and earthwork.
That's a huge amount of cost.
It does.
Yeah.
It's probably a 20% premium just to build on a hill.
Easily.
At least. Maybe 25%. Now, I would never deter anyone from building a home. I think if you have the means to do it, I think it's an exciting thing to do. I would caution to get an architect.
Can we underline that? Get an architect?
No, we started the process of just kind of looking at stuff online, and so you get some ideas and things like that. But the reality is, beyond the architect, the interior design side of it as well, because that's where we really struggled in renovations, was the interior design piece. And so I'm a qualified expert interior designer to guide a lot of things. And one thing he remarked about our construction documents was the detail and the just very, very impressive construction documents. You really felt comfortable building a home off of the documents that Sherry and her team put together.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I don't know if you guys all have the same design services to help with the research on how to just lots of little tile, or just helping you through that process. That was really important or helpful.
Thank you for all the kind words. I do appreciate that. We do pride ourselves on our detailed drawings, and I think it does make a difference in custom homes. And I think there's a place for everything. There's a place for production homes. There's a place for buying your plans off the internet. Whatever leads to the home that you love, but you guys specifically came to us to do a custom home, wanted to do something different, something modern, something that no one's done before on a very unique piece of land. So I'm glad that part worked out for you. There are always ups and downs in every construction project. And I really appreciate you guys sharing very candidly some of those ups and downs, because it really does help people. And honestly, it helps us as professionals to understand when you're done with a project. When we are done with a project, our clients aren't necessarily emotionally done with the project, right? So I appreciate that and everything that you guys have shared with us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Okay, so what did you guys think?
I loved it. I really appreciated how clear they were about the things that they wish they would have done differently.
Right.
I think it's a unique perspective that they did an intergenerational house, because there's a lot more that you have to weigh when you're doing an intergenerational house. There's more people who are coming and going. There's a lot more going on. And I think, as they were talking about the budget, I was also reflecting on the fact that they basically bought or built 2 houses.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's that. So I thought that was really cool. I loved that they wanted to do a modern house.
Mm-hmm.
You don't often hear that. They're sort of in this 1970s neighborhood, whatever, but they wanted to do something really different. So
I think there were a couple of things that really stood out that I think are teachable moments for me, but also for people who might be considering this. Is the first is that there was clearly a big disparity between how much they initially budgeted and how much they ended up spending. And so figuring out in that process how you as a couple, as a family, as whatever, are going to have that conversation. And she really brought that up a couple of times, which was like, what is the check-in process? How are we kind of going to work through this? Because I have been working for how long? Like 27 years. I have yet to come across a project that came in less than what we initially thought it would. Now, occasionally it comes in right. I mean, we don't overdo it, but it's very rare that you get somewhere somebody walks in and says, I want to spend X for the scope they want, and for that scope for it to be less than that. So, I think that that's an important skill set to work on prior to going into a construction project, to put up some parameters around communication and how you're going to kind of have that conversation, not only between yourselves, but with your contractor or with your architect or whomever that is, so that everybody's sort of continually on the same page. I thought that was a good point.
I noticed a couple of things. Of course, I know them. I know their story, and I know how the build went, and there were some rocky times. It was important for them to have themselves, who were educated in the process and were participating in it, their general contractor, who did help work through some of those things, and the architect as a separate entity, and not someone that has anything in the game, right? Like It wasn't hurting us to give them our opinion, our professional opinion. One thing that led to a lot of the rough parts of this project was that they bought the piece of land before they ever talked to us. And I think that is critical. Most of our clients do that. I don't know if yours do, but most of our clients come to us with the piece of land already. And the amount, he even said he put it at 20% overage was just the land because of the piece of land they had. So we as architects, I think, certainly can help with that, at least to give them a heads up. Hey, this is what you're heading into. And then if you buy that land anyway, at least
your eyes are open. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, usually, we're working in more urban environments generally, in the Boston area or, in other places. So the buying the land thing isn't as big of a deal, but what people do instead is buy the house or buy the apartment or buy the condo or whatever, and then come find us. And then I have to say, well, if I would have known, like, before you bought this, I would have told you about all these issues. And now we can't do anything about it. And now it's going to cost you X% more to deal with all of it.
Lots of architects will go on walkthroughs with you while you're going to look at homes. Like Marilyn does it. I do it. Like, all you have to do is call us. We'll come and check.
Do you guys charge for that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. I also appreciated they came up a couple times about the lighting. And there was something that I just wanted to kind of pull out of that, which is to say that they had a lighting plan from you, Sherry.
Right.
But then they decided to go talk to the supplier, and the supplier, ramped up the number of lights, and they spent tons and tons of money. And, there's this situation of what you were saying a second ago about having a horse in the race or whatever. Like, us as an architect, I don't care if there's 50 lights or 5 lights. It doesn't matter to me. My goal is to get the client to the finish line with a great project that suits their needs. A lighting salesperson's goal is to sell you more lights. So
exactly.
I think there's an idea that the architect is always cranking up the cost of the project, but why would I do that? I don't want them to have a bunch of lights that they spent money on that they don't want. I mean, that is probably tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Yes. So I thought that was an interesting point, and it kept coming up for them,
as a regret.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am Sherry Scott with Springhouse Architects.
I'm Marilyn Modinger of Runcible Studios.
And I'm Taylor Davis at TPD Architect.
And thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to Home, the Second Story podcast. Feel free to share this episode with a friend. Contact information for all 3 of our architects are in our show notes. And don't miss future episodes. Follow or subscribe to our show for free in Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now.